of the Stanford Institute of Philanthropy here at City University. We're going to do a hard start at 10 after. This is going to be streamed and recorded. You will not be seen, so you all look lovely. You don't need to concern yourself about being on camera or anonymity. But as we get started, I'd love to, at least with those who are here, because we only have a few that may be arriving, if you just go around with your name and maybe the organization or your interest in being here today.
Hi, I'm Michelle Doherty. I work at Cardia. We're a public health nonprofit that works in sexual and reproductive health. I'm project coordinator there, which means I wear many hats, but one of the things that I do, I'm on the social media team.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Whitten with Earthshare Washington. We connect companies with a bunch of different environmental groups. So I would be areas communications and operations.
Here for two groups. The first is the Seattle Stand Down. It's an event that we do in December down at the Georgetown campus. We take care of about over 300 veterans that are either experiencing or at risk of homelessness. I also volunteer with the Veterans Yoga Project, and we teach yoga to primarily veterans, but anyone who's suffered trauma.
I'm Eve. I'm on two boards, Puget Sound Community School and now Big Crowd Business Association. And I'm here just to be immersed in the language. I have no idea what I can take away from this, but I feel like I need to start learning it.
Okay.
I'm Lonnie Carlisle, and I'm a teacher here at Wayne Population and Biology at the University of Washington. And I'm here primarily for personal reasons that I volunteer for groups like Greenpeace and various things.
I am the administrative director for the Sky Valley Food Bank that you know. And we are on Facebook and need to figure out what else we need to do.
Great.
Hi everyone, my name is Jordan. I use she, her pronouns, and I work for Powerful Voices, a social justice nonprofit that supports and has resources for young folks who identify as girls in the Central District. But yeah, I'm here as their new communication and community engagement coordinator.
Great.
Hi, my name is Alejandro. I'm a fellow with the Moving Worlds Institute here in Seattle, and I also have a background in tech and frequently help people and organizations with integrated internet and digital things. So I just wanted to hear what people have to say on the matter.
Yeah. What's new? What people are talking about? Great.
Hi, I'm Corinne Kalia. I work with Vision House, which is we provide transitional housing for homeless families in the Puget Sound area. We have a location in Renton and Shoreline, and I'm one of their development coordinators. And I just kind of want to increase our digital presence.
Okay.
I'm Claudia Levi. I'm faculty at Edmonds Community College in the Business Management Department, and we just want to know more about digital.
All things digital.
Hi, I'm Chica Willis. I work at City U and I study here as well. I'm just here out of interest and curiosity.
And I'm Stephanie. I'm in the marketing communications at Fair Start, which is an organization that works with folks who are living in poverty or experiencing homelessness, get job training in the food service industry. Here more for ongoing education and refresher.
Great. Kathy's going to be with us for a little bit, so you just want to.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kathy Cox.
Great. Great. So I'm going to do a little bit of my housekeeping and introduction, just as somebody comes in, I'll catch them over there. This is the restroom code. The restroom, if you go back out to the atrium, past the elevators and then turn right, you'll find the restrooms, and there's a keypad. So this is what if for some reason you go to, there's another set of restrooms, those are filled, and you ask someone, they'll point you to another set, and then you wouldn't use this check mark, you'd use a star. Yeah, the reason is not really important. Starbucks, many of you maybe have already found out, you do not actually have to go out of the building and all the way around. If the Starbucks is in the corner of this building, you can go to our library and get in the fancy door from our school. Okay? And as well, we will have a lunch break. We're kind of filming it sort of a little bit of a break, but kind of more of a working lunch. So we won't be breaking for a long time because I know that these folks have a lot to do. And Linda, I missed you. I'm sorry. All of a sudden, like 2 minutes, I'm like, oh, this is Linda. Can you introduce yourself?
So, yes, I'm Melinda McBride, and I am a fundraising and database consultant, so I do a little bit like consulting. And I also have been working for an organization called Roots of Resilience, which works to help ranchers adopt more climate-friendly practices. And I just started working with a group called Farm to Forest, which is working on biochar, using biochar from forests to restore farmland. And they are brand new, so I asked them like all these questions on this survey, and I have not gotten any answers.
Oh, good. Well, you're asking the right questions. That's great. That's great. So, so I've been at CityU about 3 years. I actually started as an instructor in our ELP, our English language program, teaching English to international students, and then was involved with enrollment. So one of the things we've left is some information about at least one program here at CityU. So, but if you have questions about CityU, we are private nonprofit, a little over 40 years old. We were at the forefront of online learning. We have about 7,000 students, 60% or so are online. So, and we have a wide range of degree programs, primarily towards the business end and the education end, not the hard sciences, not nursing, some of those kinds of degrees. And this building that you're in was built in 1947 as the Seattle Post-Intelligence building, so it's the third building. That huge atrium housed the printing presses. And my husband, who's a born and bred, remembers bringing his paper money to turn in because he delivered papers to this building. So it's been here and it's very loved by the community. The Stanford Institute of Philanthropy, I'm going to run. Can I run my thing? Oh. I want to run a little bit about who we are.
Over on the right is presents, upper right.
Okay, so the Stanford Institute of Philanthropy came to City University of Seattle through a grant from National University in California. Denny Stanford is a,
I think next would be right in the back.
oh, okay. And you can start.
We're on. Yeah.
We're streaming this, so welcome to the people who are listening to us, and it's also going to be recorded. And if you have any problems with your streaming, please, you got a link that got you some information about how you can get help. So back to Stanford. Denny Stanford, billionaire in California, has made a pledge to give his money away. Well, guys, we're very grateful. And he has one of his concerns was about fundraising and building capacity in nonprofits. He would have nonprofits somehow find him, send him a random letter. Hi, would you give us $100,000? And he began to realize that many of them didn't have knowledge of. Okay, I'll pull around everywhere. So. That they didn't have the capacity or the general understanding that they really needed to, So his mission and ours is to help nonprofits significantly increase fundraising capabilities and have an impact in their community and society. He made his billions in finance and sales, and so he wanted to bring some business and sales concepts to nonprofits so that they could utilize them in a more organized fashion. The main premise of our workshops is what he called cause selling. And as you look at this circle, you'll think, oh, I understand this. That we start with prospecting and free approach. this presentation and storytelling that is circled here because from the last workshop, but it's also a big part. A lot of this is what we're going to be talking about today. The ways in which you can prospect, approach, find out people's needs, present your story. Most nonprofits don't think of anything except this, the asking for money. We gotta get the money, we gotta get the money. And he wanted to, and what all of our workshops are based on, is helping people understand that gaining members to be committed to your cause is a relationship that needs to be built and sustained. So if I do this, then oh, there we go. So now I'm going to turn it over. Am I turning it over to Tyler?
We'll introduce ourselves. Yeah.
Okay. So if you have any questions, you can always I'll be kind of over there, do this, and I'll come find you. But otherwise, I'm going to let these folks who are the pros introduce themselves.
First of all, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the space and the opportunity to do this again. This will be our third time running this presentation. My name is Joel Myers, and I actually run a group called Seattle Tech for Good. And we put on quarterly workshops, seminars for the nonprofit and tech volunteers. And my company is Fuse IQ. And we've been around for 16 years offering tech and design services to nonprofits. In fact, one of our clients is Fair Start. My interest in this is there's so much knowledge that we've gained over the years, and it just feels right to share it out and really help nonprofits. That's on the web.
Hi, I'm Tyler Lepard, and I'm an independent communications consultant. So my company name is Wondershop Communications, and I primarily work with nonprofits. So that's been my background in the past, doing communications and advocacy and social media.
Hello everyone, my name is Jeffrey Perkins. My company is Seattle Web Search. I work primarily with small to medium-sized businesses. I'm an SEO consultant. I also work in nonprofits because of a thing called Google Grants, which is $10,000 from Google every month for a pay-per-click. So nonprofits have a huge advantage on SEO because of that.
So what's SEO?
SEO is just making Google happy.
Search engine
optimization. So the happier you make Google, the higher on the list of you.
So we already went through that. All right, so quick introduction to this workshop. We're going to be running through strategy. Tyler's going to be running through strategy and messaging around social media and the written word, how you're communicating. We have a couple exercises along those lines, and the exercises are in the workbook that's in front of you. And it will be interactive, meaning you'll be interacting with your neighbor, and we'll also be interacting with the whole group. We'll be taking a little bit of break, and then we're moving into technology, which includes your website technology, website design, presentation, search engine optimization, and if we have time, we'll talk a little bit about video, CRM, and text SMS. So,
Thank you very much. All right. So each of these topics that we're talking about can apply specifically to digital communications like social media, or a lot of it can apply to more communications broadly, a lot of the same elements work. But each of these things, we could spend a whole workshop on each little thing. So, but this is just an overview of these things, trying to call out some tips and best practices to help you get started in this at various levels. We're going to start with digital communications strategy. Does anyone want to shout out, like, what is a communications strategy? You need these elements. These are the essentials. But why would you have a strategy? Anyone?
To accomplish something.
Yes, to accomplish something. I mean, it's very helpful to start out by identifying what are your objectives. Like, what do you want to have done? Who do you want to talk to? So then what levers do you want to pull? What sort of communications channels or platforms do you want to be on? How are you going to measure if you've actually had success? Have you met your objectives? All of these things are important. And having a digital communications strategy for your organization, it should support your overall organizational strategy. And if you're focusing on a digital strategy, that should support your overall communications strategy. But this essentially allows, all of your staff and maybe your partners or your board, it allows everyone to have a unified messages, to all be on the same page about what you're trying to achieve and really, move forward together rather than having lots of little one-offs like, oh, we should be on Twitter, or we should have a video, all of these things, which can happen because you're going along doing your work. But if you take the time to make your strategy, you can be much more strategic and actually achieve things with minimal resources, because we work in nonprofits, a lot of us, and you don't have a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of staff. You can still really get a lot done. Can you see my new light? Yeah. Okay, great. So I'm going to go into back to, oops. There we go. So, talking about your objectives. So all good communication strategies start with a goal. And so what are you trying to accomplish? It should be, hopefully, more than just increase the number of followers on Twitter. That's one measure of maybe if you're effective on Twitter, if you're picking up new followers along the way. But, is your goal to support the development department? Or maybe you don't have a development department, but you need to raise some money for your organization. Is your goal to build your online community so that you have more people who know about the organization? You're raising awareness for your cause. You want them to be more engaged, so you're not just sending things out on your Facebook, but you're actually getting comments and shares and having that engagement and that back and forth that social media is good at. And then, talking about your audience, and let's move on to a little, oops, here's an example of digital strategy. We'll just skip that. This was just at the really simplified, high level, calling out an objective for Echoing Green. It was one of my clients a couple years ago in New York, and they have fellowships for entrepreneurs in different categories. So their objective was for this project I worked with them on, increase attention for their announcement of new fellows. So we looked at the audiences, okay, funders, maybe we can get some more funders to support these fellows. Current fellows, we wanted to spread the word because they're obviously already invested in Echoing Green, so they can help apply to their networks. And then potential fellows, because they also wanted new people to apply for their fellowship. They came up with some messages that we used on various social medias. This is not just another list. Our fellows aren't just a group of interesting entrepreneurs. Their ideas and commitments are changing lives and communities. We bring them together to go all in and change the world. And then the tactics were, we launched a new page on their website. We put up some toolkits, so that made it really easy for people to share the announcement. So their board members and their staff and all of these other audiences could go to the toolkit to use the example of Facebook post. Just makes it really easy. Their email newsletter, you send announcement emails to their segmented list. Facebook posts, post graphics, encourage the community to share. And Twitter, reaching out to influencers who are interested in the topics that the entrepreneurs, the fellowships are around. Like one was Black male achievement. And so reaching out to people who are already talking about that topic on Twitter to help spread the word. And of course, so we looked at website visits, social media reach and engagement, email open, and click-through rates. So this is an example of really high-level strategy. Yes?
When I look at your measurements, I've got a background in planning and stuff, and what I see there is what I take as measures of performance, not measures of effectiveness. You've measured all of those numbers because they're measurable.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
What was the effect?
Yeah, that's really great. And so, yeah, these are just a few of the measures that you can measure while you're doing communications. But exactly, like if you really want to measure the effect, well, then you look at, okay, did we get more applications? What's the number of applications for people applying to the next round of fellows? Who are the influencers who actually did join on and spread the word, and the number of partners who did that? And so you can look at, what their reach is or potential impressions, which is not a great metric online. It's sort of a made-up metric because it's like, if everyone were looking at their computer screen right now while all of these people were tweeting, that's how many people would see it. But we're not all looking at our computer screen, not at Twitter at least, all the time. So yeah, no, you're right. There are definitely other measurements that you have to look at. We could get into a little bit of later I'll mention surveys for a different purpose, but you can do like a survey monkey to see like, are more people aware of what your mission is? Are more people aware of the cause and why it's important? So different things that you can measure in that too. Great question. So let's move on to from objective to identifying your audience. And it's much easier to think about achieving something with a specific person or a very specific group of people rather than a really wide, vague audience, right? I've heard some people say, oh yeah, we are reaching out to the engaged public. That's huge. Like that, you can't, okay, how am I going to reach the engaged public? Like that means everything, and you can't do everything. So you need to get more strategic and more, like narrow it down to, okay, how am I going to really actually reach the people that I want to reach? So say I'm trying to reach women who are single in their 40s who have an income of X. You know what I mean? Like if you get more specific, then you can look about, okay, well, this group of people probably gets their news from NPR, or maybe from the Seattle Times, or from, this group of people is likely to be on Facebook. These days, most people are likely to be on Facebook. But, that way you can really gauge, do I need to be on Twitter or not? If I'm trying to talk to a group of people that isn't really a large group that uses Twitter, maybe you don't need to be on Twitter. Maybe it's not that useful for you. So one of the ways that you can really hone in on who your audience is talking about personas. And this, Joel, do you remember where this site is from? I'm blanking right now.
UXpressia?
Yeah, UXpressia. So they have free templates.
And just as a note, we do list those sites that we're referencing in the slideshow. We will be sharing the slideshow out.
Yep. So you don't have to scribble furiously. It's okay. But this is just an example of, okay, if you really want to hone in, there are a couple ways that you could create personas. And this will help you get more specific about your type of audiences and who you're trying to reach. Because you could either use existing research of, okay, I know that based on my community, I have, a large group of women, white women who are in this age, and so you could fill out the information based on the actual demographics info that you have. A lot of us may not have that actual information for your nonprofit, so you can also either do a survey of your community to try to get that information, a simple survey monkey, or maybe a more in-depth survey, or you can make estimates. You can sort of make like a straw man, like, okay, I know I really want to be reaching women of this age because I think they're the most likely to respond to my cause and my message. And so then you can, sort of estimate and guess and fill out information about that, just so that you have someone specific in mind as you go along thinking about, okay, we're really going to name this person Lotta. And so how do we reach Lotta? Where does Lotta eat? Where does she go? Who does she talk to? How can we actually reach this person? It just helps you think more specifically about your audiences, even if it's not a real person. It's okay. Another good way to think about your audience and how best to reach them is something called a journey map. This is also something that Joel has worked with and can talk a little bit more extensively about. But the general idea is if you have a specific person that you're trying to reach in mind, you think about how, either based on real research or just thinking about your audience and what you sort of know and how they might interact with you, how might Sarah interact with my organization? Say that she hears about me through a colleague, and so she goes to a website. So when she goes to, you sort of have a website here, what is she thinking and feeling when she sees our website? What might her questions be? And so, how are we going to answer those without her actually like emailing to us and saying, oh, I have these questions, right? If you're thinking in advance, instead of thinking about, this is my organization and my cause, and here's what I want to tell people, here's how I want to interact with them, you're thinking about it from the user experience, from your customers, from your members, from your community. How are they experiencing your organization, and what do they want? What are they wondering about? Joel, do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, just real quick. So journey map is pretty templatized, meaning if you just Google it, images, you're going to find all kinds of examples. But what's really telling here is really that emotional aspect that you don't get out of site mapping or doing other kinds of studies, because you really want to figure out what those recommendations are. So Tyler was saying that initial, what is the empathetic response that you want to have that person have, and then really think about how you're communicating that through the website. What is the language? What are the images? And just going through this exercise, which could take several hours or days, depending on how deep you want to go, coming up with the recommendations is really the most important part, because that's when you say, oh, we really want to do a social media touch there, or if they filled out the form, let's also give them a call to reassure them, or whatever the engagement is. So these are really telling, because it really makes you think through stuff that you usually wouldn't think through.
Can I add something to that?
Mm-hmm.
So you were asking a question about, monitoring statistics and what they mean. This is really important because this is what will result in, conversions, actually getting what you want. And in SEO, that's typically hard to do. It's a lot easier to get traffic and get visibility to your website, but to make sales from that traffic is a whole other story. And that's where something like this can be really powerful. This is what makes humans happy as opposed to what makes Google happy.
And sales could be, I want them to sign up for my email newsletter. I want them to donate. I want them to volunteer. So it's that sort of conversion that Jack's talking about, not just selling.
Do you test on real people at the fact that are unaware? This sort of cycle, like you want a UX experience, you would bring somebody in that doesn't know about your experience and test out your abilities.
Yeah, so that's called A/B testing. Okay. So they would, put out like 10 different messages. One that performs the best, they would use that one.
Or doing just interviewing, right? Just like
Surveys.
And having specific questions, or targeting the response, the areas that you want to target.
Right, yeah, interviews and surveys are a great way to do that. I mean, like all of these things you can dive much deeper into, or if you don't have a lot of time or resources to do it, even just thinking through this journey with your team, and then maybe checking in with a couple of your members of the community to say, hey, does this make sense? Am I missing something? Is this, if you were a new person and didn't know about our organization, are these the questions you have? What else would you add to this? So, you can sort of do like a sort of like simple, sort of shallow take on this, or you can dive in really deep.
Yeah, that's what time and budget.
Yeah, and I also think that a lot of people just put too much information on people too soon. If you think about school, imagine if someone gave you the final at the beginning. Like, that would turn people off. So there is a process. You need to educate them little pieces at a time until they get to the end. You don't want to oversell them too early.
And we'll talk about that also in social media a little bit later, just because, you often, like if somebody's never heard of your organization and they come to your Facebook page, the first thing you do is not be, hey, donate some money to us, right? You have to bring them along. You have sort of like the entry level asks, and then sort of that engagement curve or that ladder that you take them along to before they become a donor or a member of the community or an advocate on your behalf.
The relationship building, which you mentioned earlier, I think you should really think about that, because it's a good way to think about it as opposed to, how can I get these donations? How can I get these volunteers? Think about the relationship building, and it'll kind of come naturally.
Mm-hmm. And we'll also, this what Joel mentioned about like the emotions and how people are feeling, and we'll talk about this a little bit in terms of messaging, but people aren't robots, and some people really love facts, and that's great, but oftentimes people are moved by story, by real people, by feeling something. It's not just here, it's here too. So thinking about, is somebody anxious when they're going to your website, like, oh, maybe I want to volunteer, but I'm not sure what that's going to look like. Like, maybe I want to volunteer for Washington Trails Association and go out on the trail and like do some trail work. Oh, wait, what, do I have to write shoes for that? Am I going to get muddy? Like, what's the, so you try to address those questions up front.
And I think this is a great news for nonprofits because, in general, it kind of falls in line with the way people operate. You're doing what you do because you're passionate about what you're doing, not because of the dollars. And because of that, just your SEO process is naturally more in the realm of, just express yourself. The more to express yourself online, it's the why that makes nonprofits unique. It's not the what you do and who you do it for. It's usually why you're doing it. And that should be a huge advantage for nonprofits. It's very social media friendly.
right, so now we get to what do you want your audience to do? So calls to action are important. Here's some good examples. But you should think about like using strong action verbs. You want to not have sort of passive like, oh, nobody's going to say, oh, it would be great if you might maybe donate to this thing. So you think about like, here's a great story where you help us protect the human rights of tribal people and celebrate their diversity, and using images. And, you participated in the Women's March, sign up to be alerted of calls to action from the organizers, etc. So what are examples? Anybody want to shout out maybe what call to action for them would be that you might use at your organization?
Donate now.
Donate now.
Learn more.
Learn more is a great one. Yeah, and it's pretty low lift, right? Because if somebody's reading this and they're interested, they probably want to learn more. And
Sign up for our program.
sign up for a program, that's great.
Help someone in need.
Yeah, help someone. Yeah, because learning more and signing up for the program is good, but it's not super specific and compelling. So maybe like help someone in need by signing up for our program, by learning more about this group that does X.
Today's the last day.
Today's the last day. Yeah, urgency. Do this now. If you do that all the time, it's not going to work. But nice, occasional marks of that.
Avoid the click here.
Yeah,
That's
click here
overused a lot.
is very old school. Yeah, and that's, I'm just going to shout this out because it's a pet peeve of mine. Instead of doing like click here in any sort of email or website or whatever, hyperlink what you are actually talking about. Like read about the journey of Sarah, blah, 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 and make that the link instead of click here to blah, blah, blah. Okay. So this is just talking a little bit about going back to not just facts and data and numbers, but why do people actually do things? What's the
Can I
psychology?
say something there?
Yeah.
When you mentioned the click here, it works for certain audiences, like
Okay.
elderly people. Some of them it's not very obvious this communication strategy about anything that's can be clickable, or if the colors that you're using are not obviously it's going to be a link.
Oh,
May not be obvious for them. So
That's a good point.
It's
Click
good
here
guidance,
may
though.
not be obvious. It may be good for elderly folks who aren't familiar with the blue hyperlink is always clickable.
I think that's an important thing to mention. You should always pay attention to your analytics because everybody's different. So what may work for one person may not work for you. So if you pay attention to the analytics, you can measure what works and what doesn't, and just keep doing what works. And a little bit less with it.
Okay, great. So there have been studies and research done about the psychology of what people respond to, and one of the things is keeping it positive. If you do the sort of if you have a negative message or it's very sad, people may feel like, oh, there's nothing I can do, that's horrible, and they get sort of overwhelmed, right? So if you are talking about, okay, we have this problem, but we're making progress, and here's something you can do to help that, it's that keeping it positive framework that can be much more compelling to people and spur them to action more than the, okay, we have this problem, it's pretty awful. Or, there are certain examples where maybe you want to tell a story that is very tugs at the heartstrings, but in general, people respond more to positive messaging or frameworks than to negative ones. And then also, obviously, the personal story we've talked about, same way that it's harder for us to imagine our audience if it's a large group of people, for your community, for your audience, if you're telling them about a large group of people, say the homeless or homeless veterans, that's less effective than if you're saying, this is Joe, he's a homeless veteran, here's his story, or like maybe a quote from him or something. You can help him by doing this, right?
A veteran who's experiencing homelessness.
A veteran who's experiencing homelessness.
Not like,
Yes, yeah, thank you for that. Hearts versus mind, we've talked a little about emotions versus facts and values. This is a quote from a Slate article that I read last February. Trying to counter a lie with a fact is like trying to get a catchy tune out of your head by reading out loud from the dictionary. It's not very likely to work, right? And so this was one of those things where if you're talking to someone, this article was about sort of the Democrats and Republicans are not talking to each other like they're talking in different frameworks. They're talking with different values. So if you're talking to someone that you disagree with, or even if you don't disagree with, maybe someone you don't know, you're trying to convince them to get involved with your organization, you really want to think about what are their values. So you're framing your messaging within those values, and you're trying to speak to the heart, right? So you're not just reading out loud from the dictionary. If someone maybe comments on your Facebook page and they're disagreeing with something, what are they feeling? Maybe they're afraid of something, and so you can address that feeling rather than just saying, no, actually you're wrong, and here's why. It's not effective. So this is another good resource that we will include in the link to our resources, and it is from, hold on one second, where's it from? The Narrative Project. There we go. So it talks about a content creator's checklist, and talking about, again, sort of the positive theme of building independence for people rather than, being like, I'm this person coming in to help them. It's more the like, we're empowering people, we're building independence, we are, they're a really capable person who's fallen on hard times. Talking about the shared values that we talked about before, describing people in terms of their hopes and values in order to create empathy. And empathy is something that I think is really helpful, going back to that journey map too, of putting yourself in the place of your community, of what are they feeling, what are they wondering, how are they interacting with you, and what do they want. It's that empathy, similarly, when you're communicating with people, that helps people connect with who you're talking about. It helps people connect with your beneficiaries or with your staff or with whoever you want to showcase. It's building that empathy between your audience and your story. And then partnership, like we said, sort of building independence, focusing on partnership so that, we're partnering with local folks on the ground if we're going somewhere else to do something, not just we're going in somewhere else to do something. And then progress, that positive framework. So this is and they have a lot of content on the Narrative Project, which is narrativeproject.org. That's really interesting and about how to frame your messages and your communications. More examples of psychology. Pathfinder talks about choice matters and sort of, this is our year. All women deserve the opportunity to choose when and whether to have children. So, really building empathy with all women. We can relate to these women who want that choice. Or a survivor's story of hope in the face of uncertainty. We've all experienced uncertainty, and hopefully we're all hopeful about something. So, it's that, showing one person or a couple of people rather than a large group of people, showing faces, smiling, that is more compelling. Okay, so we're going to have you work on your communications exercise in your workbook. And so fill out, I think you have basically like, what is your mission, your objective, and some other couple of key things. Stop before you get to tactics. And then once you're done, we'll discuss with your neighbors a little bit, and then we'll go into tactics. So go ahead and take a couple minutes to fill out the first part of your worksheet.
very simply, he's gonna, if you're looking at 1 month, so compare to like and then me say that is that. So you get beyond that. But the other thing is, and you're writing a bit of keyword stuff, that those tools are just crazy. Because now you have a list of keywords that you want to go after, and then you can go through the analytics. I mean, you can go after these segments. The traffic to the website.
For people on the live stream, we actually are working through a worksheet, which we will share with links to Living. Yeah, and she'll distribute it. So.
This one is.
Just maybe one more minute, and then we're going to break out into groups. And Jordan had a great question of, is our audience who our current audience is right now, or who we want them to be? And you can choose. You could maybe say, okay, the first 2 audiences, I'll maybe say is who we're reaching now, like maybe our community and like 2 people from our current community, and then the third one could be who do we want to be reaching that maybe we're not doing a good job of reaching. And so that helps you think about like what can we do differently to be reaching them. Okay, so as you finish up this section, why don't you break into groups of 2 or 3 and then share what you have with each other to just get a sense of like, does what, maybe what I wrote down for our mission, does that make sense to someone who doesn't know my organization? And, you are audiences, like maybe people will have questions that are helpful. So why don't you break into groups and share with each other for a few minutes.
So I work here at City.
Yeah, maybe.
That's your mission, right?
Yeah. So how did you, when you're personally kind of, you guys
I just decided that I guess it's not happening in that community. So they're about your communication.
Yeah, for that.
So that was one that I kind of wrote down. It would be a organization. It was all about
That's what I'm
I mean, that's our yeah, so that's, I don't totally understand that communication. Is it that we, you know, is it more specifically to get there? Yeah, right. It's just because it says communication Who is your that's your target market.
Pan around so people there don't get too worried. Just generally pan around. You just show the people here? No, you see, you want you to show everybody. That's why yeah, I don't think it's like, yeah, it's the logistics. Yeah. I'm guessing she didn't tell her today. Make sure you don't get anybody here. Interesting. Oh, darn. Oh, well. How's it going? So it's like the interactive part to it. It's just talk.
And I think, you know, there's
I feel like it's a way.
Person that is about 20% dedicated.
Yeah.
But they could be doing it.
Yeah. Done very well.
Yes, I think it was there.
So from
Okay, take one more minute and then we're gonna wrap this up.
using those in
And then I
All right, we're gonna have to cut this short now. I know that we could all probably talk about this a long time, but we also we don't have all day to go through our workshop. So we are going to, would anybody like to just give a quick shout out of something that they found helpful in talking to someone else, or, did your partner give you feedback you hadn't thought of before, or any comments on this exercise? All right, so it was perfect. You all did great, and you've solved all your problems. I love to hear it. So then we're going to move on to tactics and best practices. This is really focused mostly on social media, which may be what some of you came here for. So we're just going to dig in. So as you probably know, Facebook remains the most popular social media platform. It's growing all of the time in all countries in the world, even in China, actually, where it's not start. But that happens. So 3/4 of Facebook users and half of Instagram users use each site daily. There's sort of a stat here about global NGOs. 92% have a Facebook page, 72% have a Twitter profile, 39% have an Instagram profile. Those are sort of the top. And also there's LinkedIn, of course, right? So LinkedIn over here, 51% global NGOs have LinkedIn accounts. So those are the probably the most popular, biggest social media accounts or platforms. And there are, of course, tons of new ones popping up every day, and there's ones that are not so new that other people use. So this is one of the reasons why it's important to think about who is your audience. Because, say your audience is teenagers. They're like, oh, Facebook, that's old news. We don't even use Facebook anymore, right? They're not going to call on the phone. Maybe they text a lot, but they're not going to email you. So what are they doing? Well, that's Jordan. What are teenagers doing?
Definitely Instagram.
Instagram, Snapchat. Snapchat is big, right? But if you're talking to, say, your audience is people in their 40s, some people in their 40s are using Snapchat. I'm not, but probably the majority of people in their 40s are not, but teenagers are. So that's why it's important, right, to differentiate, like, who are you really trying to talk to? So maybe you need to be on Snapchat if you're working with teenagers, but maybe you don't if you're not. So some quick stats here. 79% of online U.S. adults use Facebook. Instagram, 32% of online U.S. adults use Instagram, and 21% of online U.S. adults use Twitter. So actually more adults in the U.S. use Instagram than Twitter. But if you don't have a lot of visuals, like say you don't have many photos, you actually was just talking to a colleague, a former colleague and friend who now works for an organization that works with domestic abuse, preventing domestic abuse and helping women in New York City. they can't take pictures of their beneficiaries. They can't share those online. They have lots of privacy issues. You may have some similar privacy issues depending on who you're working with. But for Instagram, you have to have lots of good visuals. You have to have good photos or make nice little text quotes or things like that. There are ways you can get around not having photos of your beneficiaries. But if you don't have great visuals and you don't want to spend the time making them, Instagram is not the right place for you. This is from 2015, so it's a little outdated, but it just sort of talks about the different types of site use and kind of what it's used for. Similarly, Pinterest, what's often used by Pinterest? What really does well on Pinterest?
Fashion.
Fashion.
And recipes.
Recipes. Oh, yes. Crafts. Food. Wedding stuff. Travel. Lots of good visuals here, but also recipes. Well, food is visual, so But it's been the majority of women, 80% female, at least in 2015. I think that has maybe gotten a little bit more even, but it's still more women than men are using Pinterest. Instagram, social sharing, cover up pictures, videos. They've now made the videos. You can post longer videos than 30 seconds on Instagram. So, there's lots of different platforms, like I said, and they're changing all the time, but the basics remain the same. What do you want to say? Who do you want to say it to? What are your key messages? What's the call to action? What do you want people to do? So as long as you think about your communications principles, it doesn't really matter if a new site pops up that's all the rage tomorrow. You can say, okay, does that apply to the people I'm trying to talk to? Is that going to work with my strategy? So that is a little bit to deal with the, if you get a board member who's also like, we have to have a video on this crazy new thing called Aliengram. You can say, actually, it's just toddlers who are on Aliengram, and you're not talking to toddlers, so that's okay. So general social media tips. This is maybe old hat for a lot of you, but being genuine and authentic. You don't need to be like this fake salesman on whatever you're on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You should be yourself. Obviously, a really polite, professional version of yourself, not a swearing, posting any weird things on there, but genuine, authentic. You can talk about multiple parts of your personality. When I do social media coaching for executives, leadership of organizations, sometimes they're worried about, well, if I'm on Twitter, should I only talk about my organization? Should I only talk about homelessness because that's our cause? You can do that, but it's more interesting if you show more of your personality, right? Because people, if you're on Twitter as a person and not as the business, they expect there to be different elements. Like obviously you don't go talk to your friends only about homelessness all the time. So being able to show different sides of your personality is okay, and it shows that you're a real and not a robot. Listen and learn from others, especially when you first start out on a new channel. It's a good idea to listen, what are other people doing? How are they using this channel? What is a similar organization to mine doing that seems to be working really well? What is an organization doing that doesn't look like it's working very well? Okay, we're not going to do that. So listening and learning first before you really are jumping in and dominating the conversation. Being generous means, you all know what be generous means, but in this scenario, it means sharing, retweeting, calling out partners for things, not just talking about yourself all the time. So it's, oftentimes I think people sort of give different percents that say you talk about something from your program mission in your own organization, for 3 posts, and then the 4th post is about someone else, or relevant news from an article that doesn't lead back to your website. So not just talking about yourself all the time, because if you did that in person, that'd be really boring. People wouldn't want to talk to you anymore. Same applies online. Don't delete is a little bit of it's not a hard and fast rule. In general, what I'm talking about here is allow people to disagree with you. You can have a clear commenting policy, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I would say in general, don't delete things unless it's spam, whether that's a robot that's trying to sell something, or whether it's somebody that's completely off topic. Hate speech, someone advocating harm for someone, those are totally fine to delete, and anything that doesn't comply with your policy. But if someone's disagreeing or questioning or, just saying something like, that's not how I would do it, I'd say leave it there. And if you build a good community online, hopefully your community members will respond to that so that you don't have to. But you might have to start that ball rolling. Be grateful, thank people, both your community, your partners, your staff, whoever, have that generous spirit. Content is king means that there are different best practices about how often you post to each channel and when, but what really matters is, do you have good content? If you don't have a lot of great quality content, then don't worry about having to post like 3 times a day to Facebook, because that's not going to work out very well for you if you don't have great content. You want to just post really good content. Think about, like, if I'm sharing something on Facebook for one of my clients, would I actually like this? Do I actually want to share this with my friends? Maybe the answer isn't yes every time. Maybe it's sometimes like, oh, okay, this is not exactly what I'm interested in, but maybe I'm not the audience. But the idea is just that you don't want to just put stuff out there to put that out there. You want it like quality over quantity. And then cut yourself some slack, because you cannot possibly do it all. You can't read it all. You can't see it all. We don't have Twitter uploaded to our brains so that we see everything all the time. If you start following more than like 3 people, then it's done. You can't see it all. If you stick to only 3 people, it's possible if they don't tweet very much. But Twitter isn't useful if you only follow 3 people. So sometimes when people are starting out in social media, it can feel very overwhelming because there is a lot going on. There's a lot going on, even if you focus on just one topic. But that's okay. You catch pieces that you can and you contribute as you can. So cut yourself some slack. This is my fun. Let's identify what is wrong with these. This is an example of some best practices by learning what not to do. Anybody want to give a shout out about something they think maybe is not quite right here? I'll start. It's Kristen Bell, not Kirsten Bell. So it didn't actually tag her because that handle on Twitter is incorrect. So when you get someone's Twitter handle correct, that will be a hyperlink, right? You can click on it and you would go to Kristen's account and see her tweets. And she would get a notice. Somebody tweeted. I mean, she probably gets lots of notices, so maybe she's not getting attention anyway. But if you are actually trying to get someone's attention, make sure their handle is correct. What about starting a Facebook post with 3 hashtags? Not the best idea. I don't really like hashtags on Facebook anyway. You could use 1 or 2 here and there. It depends on how that does with your audience. Or one of the great things about social media is that it's a great place to experiment and you can get feedback in real time. You can say, okay, I'm going to try a Facebook post with a couple hashtags. Are people going to actually click on that? Are they actually clicking through to my content? And you can see that happening. But if you are going to use hashtags, and I would say do so sparingly on Facebook, put them at the end, because that doesn't really make sense. And it just looks spammy. Yeah.
I have such a basic question.
Sure.
I don't do Facebook.
Okay.
And so can you start a Facebook account under the organization, or is it always linked to a person?
You can, yeah, there are organizational Facebook pages. They're called business pages, I believe, is that's what the term used to be. I think that's still what it's called. But essentially, yeah, you create a page for, and I didn't show that here because I didn't want to call out the people who made these mistakes. But I think we can show you later. Yes, you create a Facebook business page for Fair Start, for example. I assume that you have one. Yes, we do. Fuse IQ has one. I just have one as myself because it's just me as Wondershop, so I don't need a Wondershop communications one. But yes, there are business pages, and people you can have admins, various admins of people who contribute to that page, and no one else can see that unless you want them to.
I think the answer is yes. You have to have personal.
Oh yeah, you do have to have.
So it would be linked to me. Yeah. So it would be linked to me, and somehow people would get it that. It
wouldn't show up as linked to you. Oh, it wouldn't? No.
Oh, okay.
You just have to have a Facebook account in order to be able to manage a business page, but no one can see who is the actual person.
Okay.
You can have multiple people, like Jeff and I could both be contributing to a Facebook page, and if you looked at that business page, you wouldn't see that was linked to us unless we wanted you to. There's a new feature that is like show team members or something like that, which has started a couple of months ago. So now you can show people who are managing the page if you want to. You don't have to. Yes.
What I do is I have a personal page, and then the privacy around that is very strict. And then I have a pseudonym. I create a page under a pseudonym. I post no freely into that, and so that's the one that our organizational page is linked to my pseudonym. So there's lots of hangouts with Facebook.
I would not encourage that because Facebook's official policy is that it has to be a real person, not a pseudonym. Like you have to have an account with your real name for Facebook. That's their policy.
It's linked to, because it's linked to my real page, it's good.
Okay.
But I exist out as a pseudonym, under a pseudonym.
Okay.
And a lot of professionals, friends of mine that are in social service agencies. They don't want their clients interacting with them on their person.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And as what's your name again? Sorry. Jamie. What Jamie mentioned is a great thing that is different between Facebook and Twitter or Instagram, in that Facebook has a lot of different levels of privacy settings. So you can be very specific about who sees your personal Facebook page. There's a lot of controls and sort of variables there that you can do. With Twitter, it's either private or public. That's it. Most accounts are public, but you can have a private account, and that way when people want to follow you, they have to send a request that you have to approve for them to see your Twitter feed. Instagram, similar, private or public. Instagram is now owned by Facebook. I don't know if you all know this. This happened, like a year or two ago? So it's helpful as a business for your Facebook business page. You can link it to your Instagram, your business account, if you have one of those, and then you can manage all the ads in one place. So there are some benefits to that. The downside is that now Instagram has the same sort of algorithm that Facebook does, in that you don't necessarily see all of the people's Instagram posts that you follow. It's selective, like Facebook is. Yes.
So I work at Edmonds Community College, and we have a number of Facebook pages. And I work in a department that we manage our own Facebook page. We, as a department, are very reluctant to go to go Twitter or Instagram, because all of us in our department are 50 and above. We just don't want to personally manage or deal with that. Your thoughts?
So, for the live stream, the question is, not wanting to go to Instagram or Twitter because of being older, not wanting to manage those accounts.
I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm being very honest.
Yeah. So what I would say is, for Instagram, let's just talk Twitter for a second.
Okay.
A Twitter account is a little different, like a Twitter business account is a little different than like a Facebook account, because they don't have the you can have multiple admins. You just have like the business account. It's just, you have a login and a password, same as if you were a person on Twitter. So we'll call this business Twitter. I have the person, login and info. And a couple of us may have that same login info, and I'll contribute to this account, but we don't have to, I'm not contributing to it through my personal Twitter account, right? It's just the business account.
Okay.
So you don't actually have to be on Twitter yourself to manage a Twitter business, like an organizational account, because it's not really any different from a personal account. You can just log in as that business. Versus on Facebook, you don't log in as the business. You log in as yourself, and then you manage the business page. So similarly for Instagram, you can just log in as the school or the department and make an Instagram account, and it doesn't have to do anything with your personal.
Yeah, I don't think it's because we're afraid of our personal stuff. That's not it. The problem is, we just don't want to have to
be on those
go
channels.
there.
Well, are the people that you want to talk to on Instagram and Twitter?
I don't know.
That would be something to consider, because maybe you don't have to be on those channels. If the people you want to talk to aren't on Twitter or Instagram, they're on Facebook and you're reaching them on Facebook, then there's no reason to be on those accounts, unless you personally want to. I find them very useful, but
I would imagine they are. That's why I'm
I mean, I could give you a pitch for it, but we'll do that later.
A couple things I would mention is that Facebook gets 79% of all engagement online. And that's more than every other social media platform combined. So I would focus the lion's share of your time and energy on Facebook. Once you feel like you've exhausted those opportunities, then diversify into other platforms. Another thing I would mention is that Facebook does not play nice with you. Okay, they do not like you using third-party automation programs like Buffer and Hootsuite. They lower your organic reach. So Facebook, compared to every other social media platform, is incredibly time-consuming. Twitter, for example, can be almost completely automated. I myself probably spend somewhere between 50 to 75 hours a month on Facebook. I spend about 30 minutes a month on Twitter. So your time can be much better spent on the other platforms. The problem is, like you said, very often people aren't there. But another thing to consider is if people aren't there and it's not popular, you have a lot less competition, which means you can get short-term results a lot faster. Facebook is just the most competitive and saturated platform by a long shot. So you have to be one of the top performers to cut through the noise.
Yeah, to the use of the Hootsuite a little more, so we are using Hootsuite with Facebook. So what were you saying about Facebook?
Facebook doesn't like third-party programs. They want you to post directly to Facebook.
So if you're using Hootsuite, then why don't they want?
Yeah, Hootsuite and any of those third-party programs will reduce your visibility.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, so my recommendation normally is to use Buffer and Hootsuite to automate all the other platforms, and then spend your time and energy on Facebook.
And for those of you who don't know what Hootsuite is, we'll get into that in a second. It's basically a social media dashboard where you can have all of your social media channels show up in this dashboard, so you don't have to go to those different sites.
And you can schedule, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So you can.
We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I just had a question. I heard it sort of muttered throughout this corner too. I mean, I think sometimes there's also ways to tap into an audience, like, especially like you're saying, like all of you are, say, about 50, right? Like, is there a way for you to tap either into your audience or work with an intern or hire somebody to do a couple hours a week to just be like, frankly, we don't understand this, but we know it's important. Like, can you do this for us? We can give you like the values, we can give you the content we'd like for you to do or to communicate, but can you use the skill set that you have to communicate that for us? Because your skill set, right, is very different than the skill set that folks maybe under 50 or under 20 have, especially under 20 when it comes to Instagram, Snapchat, and all those things. So if you find that it's helpful, I think there's ways to make your audience the expert that is also really valuable and feels valuable to your audience.
Yeah, definitely. So if you find that the people you want to talk to are on Twitter and Instagram, you decide you should be on those channels, exactly, getting an intern or someone who's more savvy on those channels already to help you out, a volunteer or something. Okay, so we're getting a little short on time. We're gonna keep moving forward. Just good visual examples. Again, visual content on almost all channels does really well, much better than just text alone. So, when you put a link on Facebook, it will often pull up sort of a preview of the article with a picture. Sometimes it doesn't do that, and so it's worthwhile to just add the picture yourself if it doesn't pull it up, because sometimes there's something weird with the site. But again, a lot of these are like how much share. So this is Facebook, Twitter, but there's an Instagram up there. So a lot of visual stuff. So even if you don't have a picture, just making text into a visual can be helpful, using quotes and things. And then real quickly on social media policies, you should have at least one, maybe two. Internal guidelines for staff are helpful to encourage your staff and your board and whoever is working with you to amplify your messages out to their networks. You want, your staff are already invested in the organization. They're knowledgeable about the work that they do, and so you want them to spread the word to their networks as well. So having a social media, this on the right is an example of an external one, but having an internal one, like here's the type of things that we encourage you to post about. If there are any like HIPAA policies or privacy issues, be very clear about what not to post about. Those types of policies are very helpful for internal. External is more like a commenting policy. This is an example. It's on the About page of the Humane Society of the United States Facebook page. It just very clearly lays out, we reserve the right to delete posts or page containing any of the following items. profanity, misinformation, spam, off-topic stuff, personal attacks, promoting violence, et cetera, pictures of animal abuse, which for them obviously is very relevant. So, this is sort of it's good to know exactly for whoever's managing your pages, this is exactly what our policy is on the stuff that we will allow and we won't allow. And it's also good for people if you delete their comments because they break this policy, come back with, hey, what's the deal? And point them exactly to this policy and say, look, this is why. So it's a good thing to have. Social media dashboards, which we were talking about Hootsuite a minute ago. This is an example of what Hootsuite looks like. This is an example of what TweetDeck looks like. There's Buffer. There's lots of different free online tools that you can use for social media dashboards. And what they really like to do, I recommend them especially for Twitter. Like Jeff said, not so much for Facebook because Facebook doesn't like that, and so it will devalue your posts if you're using a third party. But if you are using them for Twitter, it's really great because Twitter has you can make lists, so you can follow other people's lists. This is one of my lists, news, you can follow hashtags. Basically, I think that dashboards make Twitter even more useful because then you're not going to your home, like your news feed, and you're following a bunch of people. It's just, wow, there's a lot there. So much there, I can't even go through and find anything useful. This makes it really useful because I can say, okay, I have 30 minutes right now. I'm going to go look at what my news feed says. I'm going to monitor this hashtag. I want to look at global health people. What are they tweeting about? So it does require a little bit of time up front to set up lists in Twitter. And if you Google how to set up Twitter lists, there's really easy step-by-step instructions to do that. Even Hootsuite, TweetDeck, whatever site you're using will walk you through how to do different things like adding new columns or streams. But it just makes a lot of sense to be able to monitor different things going on Twitter in one place and be able to say there's a tweet chat that day you want to participate in, you can just add a new column with that hashtag, that type of thing. So any quick questions about dashboards? I know this is a lot of information in a very short time. All right, we'll just keep going. Okay. Lastly, measurement. You do want to set up metrics, both you do have some metrics of measuring what your activities are, and then you try to have some metrics of getting at what's the real impact here. This example shows the social and mobile media fundraising success spreadsheet with website visitors, blog, newsletter subscribers, fans, donations, and more than just people who like you or follow you on Twitter or whatever. You also want the engagement statistics of who's actually interacting with you on these social media channels. What are the retweets? What are the shares? What are the comments? People are actually taking not just a like, because a like is really easy, and that's great. You want them to start there, but you want to move them along so they're actually amplifying it to the network. So you want them to share. You want them to retweet, comment, actually get engaged with you. And then move them along to visiting your website, making donations, signing up for newsletters, that is all along the engagement curve or ladder. And then you can assess the depth, especially for social. You could do that really quickly. You could have the first week of a campaign and then say, hey, okay, is this part working? I don't actually see much engagement here. Let's change it up. Let's try a different hashtag. Let's try, maybe we're not going to focus as much on Twitter. We're just going to really focus on Facebook. So you have that ability to assess and adapt much more quickly than we used to have. Email newsletters. Email is still probably the most common way to communicate with people. And similarly, you want to think about who's my audience in this newsletter? What do I want them to do? Is this mostly about fundraising? Am I going to mostly be asking them to donate money? How can I intersperse stories and compelling content that's not just about asking for money so that it really makes them care about our organization first and then maybe they'll donate? You want very simple, clean design, not super cluttered. You want some good visuals. There's different schools of thought on frequency, but at the very, very least, once a quarter, because otherwise they'll forget that they even signed up for your newsletter. Hopefully more once a month is a good idea. And then cross-promotion and repurposing content. So your newsletter might simply be you had a blog post, so you have a little snippet of your blog post, and you had a new page on your website, so you have a little snippet of that there, and you link back to that. So it doesn't have to be creating completely new things for your newsletter. You just repurpose the content that you already have. Blogs, I think Joel might talk about maybe a little bit, but essentially, should I have a blog or not? Depends. Do you have time to write new content and it doesn't have to be like a super intense white paper or academic journal. You can just say, hey, this is this little snippet of a news article I thought would be interesting to you. Put a little preview there and link to that, right? That can be a simple blog post. But it does require like updating that consistently. And editorial calendars, there's a couple different examples here. They can be very detailed, like this. This is a Lightbox Collaborative, has a free template like this, and they just have ideas of like, February is American History Month, and there's Groundhog Day, and Super Bowl Sunday, so there might be various hooks that you could use to talk about your content if it's relevant. Or you might have a simple like outline in a Word document of here's a November theme, and here's some different dates where we could, people are going to be talking about National Philanthropy Day, so let's donate to our thing for National Philanthropy Day. This past week was International Day of the Girl, so there was a lot of talking about education and things around the world that apply to girls. And I'm done with 6 minutes to spare. So any questions or discussions, if you want to talk about any challenges that you have or questions, go ahead.
Just a little bit building an audience, any 5-minute tips you can get. I know that like creating great content and sucking people in that way we have a real hard time that we have people look at the content and then don't like us or don't. I know you're not supposed to be out there, please like us on Facebook all the time and everything. Is there any quick, easy ways to kind of lead them into that?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be saying all the time, like us on Facebook, do this, do that, but occasionally just explicitly asking them to do that. Occasionally on Facebook saying, please retweet if you care about X. You don't want to do that at every post, of course, but occasionally saying, like, this is actually what we explicitly want you to do is a good thing for people. Depends on the channel, like if you're on Twitter, growing your audience, participating in a Twitter chat can be a really useful way to do that. You don't have to run the chat, you can just participate in someone else's chat that's relevant for you. It's just a way that people who are interested in that topic will say, oh, hey, look, I didn't know about this organization. It looks like they have interesting things, as part of this chat. Yeah, I think
an easy one is events. Because this, SEO kind of, it starts slow, and doing something offline, you get face to face, right? And that's a giveaway.
Sign up, show me your phone if you like this, something.
Yeah, and then also saying if social media doesn't work with your audience, maybe try email or try something different. Some people from places that just don't like social media. Maybe try some videos. Videos are very, very powerful, and we're going to get to that later. They're really easy to make these days. And they stand out from the competition.
I'm interested in having a debate real quick. We want to get people to launch, we want to keep this moving, but we do have one more exercise that is valuable. Are you all okay, maybe extending to 12:40 so you can work on the exercise? Is everybody good with that?
Or anybody not good with it?
Anybody not good with that? If you're super hungry, you have to eat.
And if you are, it's all set up right out here. You could sneak out. Or we could just do like 5 minutes of like fill out the exercise, talk to the person next to you, see if there's any questions that come up, and then move on.
Or use one person as an example. I think a lot of these questions will be similar.
Okay, so we're going to move forward with that. We haven't heard any strong objections. So this page has tactics and also just thinking about your journey map. So we'll use the next 10 minutes for that, and also in that time, maybe talk it over with your neighbor. Yeah.
So talking about the Facebook algorithm, we have this false sense that when we put a post on Facebook, everybody who likes it sees it, and that's not the case. Are you gonna talk about how we can work with that to get more people to be seeing our posts?
Engagement. That is the #1 metric. Are people liking, sharing, and commenting on your material? If nobody is, then that reach goes down. If people are, it goes up.
So one of the things that you could do is, and it matters like, as you post it, like within the next like 10 to 15 minutes, does anybody interact with it? Somebody hit like or share, comment, like Jeff said. So you could maybe ask, like, when you post something, one of your staff people will like go and like it or share it. You could ask, you could sort of get the engagement started, and that way might help a little bit.
And you can reach out and engage with other people. When you're getting started, you're gonna have to make the initiative. So go out and find some things you like and share, and comment.
So
and then ask them to recipient.
Yeah, I put together an email that's ready for the staff and for the board, maybe some key friends. As soon as I post, they get an email that says, it's just been posted, go and like it.
Are we going to talk a little bit more about that? I think it's related to that. 40% should be spent creating the content, and we've talked a lot about content and the journeys and blah, blah, blah. And while the remaining 60% should be spent promoting the content, are we going to talk a little bit more also about that area?
I mean, these guys are going to talk more about like the website and the search and ads. So like definitely ads is promoting content. The other thing is that we've sort of talked about is, if you have, say, a blog post, then you want to be tweeting that out, or if you do a Facebook post about it, you want to be, maybe tweeting at, one of the things Twitter is good for is you can tweet at people that you don't actually have a connection to yet. And if they're super celebrity, maybe they won't notice because they get so many of those things. But for example, since we're here in Seattle, I love John Richards, the KXP DJ in the morning, and I've been able to tweet at him occasionally relevant things where he's not actually my friend, he doesn't know me, but we've had a Twitter conversation back and forth because Twitter allows you to do that.
And I think that a good answer to your question is check out your competition. Google how you want to show up and check out the top 3 people, see what they're doing. You want to replicate what they're doing in the long term, but then you want to do what they're not doing to get short-term results. Because if you're doing exactly what your competitor is doing, it's going to take a long time to see results. You're going to have to do more than they're doing, and you're going to have to do it better because they did it before you.
Can I just say, I'm hearing a lot of what to do versus a request of how to do it. And I'm wondering, as we go into the afternoon, I'm hearing more of, well, we're going to tell you what to do, but then we're going to walk out of this thinking, yeah, how do I do that? Right? And so at least that's how I'm feeling as well. How much is going to be focused on what you just said, I think is great, and an example of best practice of, here's the greatest fundraising Facebook ad of all time. This is what went right. This is how that engaged and how that did that. Can we expect that, after lunch, if there's some how-to, I know that the last page of the booklet says Google Grants. This is what you do.
That would be an easy answer. Google Grants is you absolutely should do a Google Grant if you're a nonprofit. It is the most massive opportunity for SEO.
And you're going to talk about content.
Yeah, we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, some of this social, like I said, we could deep dive into each of these things for hours. But so it's been sort of an overall high level thing. How to promote content is using these different channels to promote it. It's the language that you use to do that. It's how do you talk about it? How do you target it to certain people? Like Facebook ads, maybe we might get into a little bit, but it can be very specific demographics that you target. So it's how to promote things is a really broad question.
Yeah,
Look that we've
specific.
gotten at that from really specific or different ways.
But an easy answer to your question is Google Grants and make videos, really. But in SEO and online marketing, content really is at the heart of it. So if you don't have content, you're going to need to make content one way or the other. So if you have a lot of content, then that question becomes relevant because then there are ways to distribute it more effectively.
There's an asset that I use if I stump up against it. I Google it on YouTube, and I'll often find a video that is at least helpful. The other asset that I've used through our public library, I live across the water in Kitsap County, but our library has got a person who specializes in helping nonprofits, and through them I've gotten help with social media and stuff. So I work through my library for free, and I use YouTube videos.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that's a really good point. Nonprofits like to help each other very often. There's a lot of networking groups you can go to. So go to a couple networking groups, make some friends with some nonprofits, and then you guys can help each other. And instead of it all falling on you, now you guys can share the
And
load.
Tech for Good, Seattle Tech for Good.
Seattle Tech for Good. Also, King County Library System, they have a whole center for philanthropy in Redmond. Call them, you can email them, you can talk to them. So our library system here, not, you know, because that's like barely there, but it is across the water. So they have resources right there.
And the significance of the Redmond office is you have to go to that particular office to get access to a specific database. You can often get general assistance about nonprofit stuff at almost any library, but to access that specific database because of licensing.
Right. You have to
There's
go
also another group, the Washington Nonprofits. I just attended their training yesterday on finances being unlocked for nonprofits. So,
501 Commons is another
501
great.
Commons,
Yeah.
there's lots of great.
That's where we did our last workshop, so
Right.
they're also a great resource. We've done one for Global Washington, which is a group of, works with organizations that do global work. These are some of my favorite nonprofit and communications blogs that give lots of really great tips and articles about how to do things and what's happening.
And again, you'll get access to it back, so if you don't, these will all be linked actually to those blogs. And again, just really broadly, we're trying to shotgun blast you with a lot of information, and I know it can be a little painful, but we're trying to get you introduced to a lot of different things. So you're going to have to determine what fits for you, what's clicking for you, like, oh, I really need to think about that. And then you can take that and dive deeper with some of these other resources, or give us,
And write down your questions and then reach out to someone afterwards, because those questions, I think some of those questions do just require more time, and you need to get more specific about what you're talking about.
we have all of our contact information.
All right, we need to eat lunch now.
Okay.
So lunches, there's a counter out here, there's plates and forks, et cetera, and different items. There's space to eat out there for a few minutes, or if you want to just bring it back in here and have a
So,
conversation.
can we all agree to be back in here at 10 of? And you can just bring your food in so that I will get started because we still have a lot to cover. So we all have that agreement?
Yep.
Great. All right.
To do the text as a, yeah, is there a program that